The Premier League is set to hold emergency meetings with all 20 clubs following the recent court case with Manchester City over the APT ruling. So just to clarify, for those of you who aren't aware of the APT rules, so this has been something that has been implemented after the takeover of Newcastle United. So to give you the exact date, our takeover was concluded and signed off on the 7th of October. 5 days later, teams in the Premier League have then complained and said that this takeover of Newcastle is unfair to the league. 2 days after that, the Premier League has actually brought a rule in where it works on sponsorships from that country. So Newcastle, of course, we have a Saudi Arabia background, so any sponsorships that we want in from Saudi Arabia has to be approved, and the Premier League has a deep look at everything. So it basically just means that Newcastle get held back from the sponsorship. So the Premier League will look at everything, they'll then approve it if they deem it fair, but of course it will then have a negative effect on teams like ourselves because it will be harder to get these sort of deals in. So Manchester City have been able to prove in court that some of the APT rulings have been unlawful, and to actually quote on Manchester City, so this is documents that Manchester City have said, they've actually said towards Newcastle United that there was no recorded consideration, no documents, no evidence to suggest that there was any possibility of this PSR unit coming in until after the takeover of Newcastle United in October 2021. So they've straight up said they brought this ruling because of Newcastle United's takeover, and they've also said because of the fear-mongering about the takeover of Newcastle United in the 2021. So Manchester City have actually said in court that Newcastle United's takeover and teams being scared of Newcastle United's takeover is actually the reason why the Premier League has added this rule in. And then Manchester City, of course, talked about their own circumstances and their own particular sponsorships, which has been halted because of the Premier League. So straight away, to let you know what teams in the Premier League are on the side of Manchester City, of course, Newcastle United being one of the big ones. Chelsea is amongst it, which you can expect because Chelsea is also a team that is looking to bring in several different sponsors, and it's also a club that is, I would say, in a similar position to Newcastle, where they can't do everything they want to do, but Chelsea have far more resources than Newcastle. They had far more resources than Newcastle before our takeover, so they have a bit of an edge above us. But again, a team that is not being able to quite get the deals that they wanted in. Everton and Nottingham Forest, whether that be both of them out with spite because of the point deductions last season. But I've seen a lot of Newcastle fans say they want Everton to go down. No, you do not want Everton to go down, because especially in the Premier League, so when a rule gets brought in, 13 out of the 20 teams have to agree to it. So a large majority of the teams, in a democratic point of view, have to agree to a ruling for it to come in. If Everton gets relegated to the Championship, Newcastle's lost one of the key teams that would be in favour for us. Now, in our circumstances, let's say Everton goes down, Sunderland comes up, you know exactly what side of the table Sunderland's going to be on. So for Newcastle, we need teams like Everton to stay in the league. Nottingham Forest as well is another team that is always going to be in favour for Newcastle. So in our little corner, I guess, and trying to be buddy from the red side of the Premier League, as the Man City fans have called it, we need the teams on our side to stay in the league. So yeah, I definitely want Everton to stay up. It's probably the first major point I'm going to be saying. But there's a lot of fascinating information that's came out, and I wanted to kind of get through it all in this video. So to get it on the phone here, we'll talk through some of the key details now. Manchester City's General Counsel, Simon Cliff, has actually sent a letter to all 19 teams in the league. This is so public. They've sent a letter to everyone. This is something that is out there on social media, and the fact that Manchester City have been this vocal and this public about it, you know for a fact that more is going to come out. So in terms of what Manchester City have said, on the contrary, the APT rules have been found to be unlawful as a matter of competition law and public law. This means they are void and not capable of enforcement. This has very significant consequences for APTs that have been entered into the date, and APTs that are currently being negotiated by clubs. The City have straight up said that these APT rules, you can't put them in. We can't have any of these in because it's not working. It's been unlawful. Therefore, no matter what sponsorship there is or what background they have, they are unable to implement these rules because of the fact that if one gets proven to be untruthful or unlawful towards a team, then how can any of them be fair? So that's the claim that Manchester City have made. Now, to add to my point yesterday, there's actually been xenophobic comments that have been made out by the Premier League towards the Gulf region. So the Premier League has actually said in written documents that we are looking into sponsorships in particular from the Gulf region area. And as I said again, I used Fulham as an example yesterday. So I talked about the fact that Fulham has an American-based ownership, and a team like Fulham it's much easier for them to get an American-based sponsorship in than Newcastle United to get a Saudi Arabia-based sponsorship in, because the Premier League is directly targeting the Gulf region. So, of course, in a xenophobic sense, the fact is they've targeted someone because of their background, because of where they're from. So how, as a league, can you now be able to officiate every team fairly when it's not fair? You can't say that's fair information, because the Premier League and written documents has actually stated that we are looking into clubs that have a Gulf region background. We're going to be looking at sponsorships from the Gulf region. So you can't say it's a fair system because they're picking and background of where someone is from over the actual rule itself. So you've got to say Man City, Newcastle United, they've got leg room in this. You can't say they don't. And the fact that Manchester City have been able to win in court over some key areas of the APT rules means that it has been unlawful, it has been untruthful at areas, and now you know it's going to continue to spiral out. And the Premier League has got a significant loss in their hands because, well, as a league, they have to be on top of everything. And when you're not on top of everything, an actual football team in your league has been able to go to court and to actually prove in areas that it's been unlawful. You can't say the Premier League is looking good coming out of this, because of course they don't. And it's been said on social media that next week they'll hold an emergency meeting with all 19 teams in the league to basically go through everything. Now they've got to sit in a room with all these clubs and explain their side of things. It'd be awkward as well, because obviously Man City's going to be there. They've got to explain about Manchester City while being with all the officiators from the different clubs. So it's going to be an interesting thing in this meeting. I'm looking forward to see what comes out in social media, because of the fact that it's been published so much. Someone's going to leak some information. One of them is going to come out and say something. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens coming out of this, because Man City, of course, aren't done in court. They're still in court. The Premier League is still in court. So it's something that hasn't 100% been finalised yet. But for Newcastle, I said it again yesterday, it's a massive step in the right direction for us. It's still going to be a long journey, as I know all you guys are going to be, I guess, sick of this by now, because it's been 3 years since our takeover, but we still haven't quite been able to pump the money in that we wanted to do, because again, Newcastle has been held back by some of the rules in the Premier League that has been brought in to essentially halt up aggression. And in a legal sense, if Newcastle United feels like some rules are unlawful, and actually, again, evidence to suggest that it's been brought in because of our takeover, of course Newcastle United can seek compensation. Of course Newcastle United can seek legal requirements, because of the fact that again, there's rules that have been brought in directly because of our takeover. There's fear-mongering, as Manchester City's actually claimed in court. There's fear-mongering towards Newcastle United. So we have got leg room, and we have got something to push off of. But yeah, in terms of me going forward, I'm not gonna lie, I've got the Man City shirt already down there. Might be wearing a Man City top next week, but I think it's fair to say everyone in Newcastle is backing Manchester City now. Everyone in Newcastle is heading towards the side of Manchester City. And again, Chelsea's in there, Everton's in there, Nottingham Forest in there. There are teams in this league that are also backing City. There has actually been teams in this league, there's at least a fourth of the league that's actually went inside with Manchester City. Newcastle in court have actually acted as a witness. They've actually stayed in court and helped Manchester City. So the fact that Newcastle went out of their way to help City out in court, again, you know what side of the fence was sitting on. So it's an interesting case. It's something that is going to continue to come out. And there's a lot of fascinating information to look into. I've shown you some real insightful information here about how the Premier League has actually acted towards Newcastle. And I'm not someone, again, I said in my last video, not someone that has that tinfoil hat, and I'm not someone that would come out and say that the Premier League's corrupt, or the Premier League doesn't like Newcastle, or is a bit of favouritism in the league. But I can't lie, there is more than what meets the eye, isn't it? And for me, I've always kind of got, I guess, side down the middle when I'm making videos. I want to make sure I'm not kind of jumping on one side of the fence or the other one. But for Newcastle United, obviously are on the side of Manchester City. I'm a Newcastle fan, so obviously I'm going to have to kind of side with the Man City side of things as well. But the reality is, Newcastle have been well and truly screwed. You can't say that we haven't. The APT rules that came in 1 week after our takeover. Man City have stated in court that they believe that there's no evidence to suggest that this APT rule was going to happen before the takeover of Newcastle United. So it's actually been added in because of our takeover, is the claim that's been made. And then it is not helped teams like Man City out, which is why they've been in court over it. But yeah, it's not great, is it? I'm not gonna lie, it's not great. But for now, again, I feel like I've probably stated most of the things I need to state in this video. There's gonna be probably more videos in this, I'm not gonna lie, there is so much information out. If there's any particular topic you want me to cover, anything in particular you want me to kind of zone in on, again, make sure to let me know. And I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts on this, because I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say that I don't think Newcastle's been treated fairly in this situation. And again, the Manchester City court case directly results in Newcastle as well, so it heavily involves us, even though we aren't actually in court. It is a case that is heavily got Newcastle United in there, so it's something for the rest of the league that is going to completely change the league. It's something that, again, is going to take a lot of time. These things don't happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of time. But Man City have been able to score a bigger one over the Premier League, and it does not look good in them at all. And I'll be fascinated and intrigued to see what happens in this emergency meeting next week, because, again, it does not look good on them. They've got a lot of thinking to do, the Premier League, and they've got a lot of explanations to hand out. But for Newcastle, we're still in there, and I wonder what the club's going to do next. So, in our point of view, I think Newcastle might be holding their cards close to their chest, but if a moment pops out, which I believe there probably has been a moment at least in the last week or so, then Newcastle might respond to that, and then Newcastle might react to that, and then Newcastle might do something themselves where they want to challenge the Premier League. But the biggest team of them all in the league, Manchester City, the one with the most money, the one with the most titles in recent years, has stood up to the Premier League. They've stood toe-to-toe, and they haven't backed down. They are toe-to-toe with the Premier League, and there's teams that are siding with Manchester City. Again, I've mentioned a few teams in there, so we'll see what happens next. But this is something that has not went away. It's going to take quite a while for this to be concluded. Well, it has took a step in the right direction for Newcastle. So we'll see what happens next. You all take care now, and we'll see you all in the next one.